The source makes a really bold claim. Nazism has nothing to do with fascism.
Which sounds historically wrong. I mean, Mussolini was a fascist, Hitler was a Nazi, they were allies.
They were allies of convenience, but the source argues that the conflation of the terms, calling Nazis fascists, was a deliberate propaganda strategy invented by one man.
Who?
Joseph Stalin.
Okay, take us back to the war room. Why did Stalin need to change the name?
Okay, set the scene. It's 1939-1940. Hitler and Stalin are allies. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, they're the two big socialist powers in Europe, and they're carving up Poland together.
Hand in hand.
But then, June 1941, Hitler betrays Stalin. He launches Operation Barbarossa, invades the Soviet Union, and suddenly Stalin is fighting for his life. He's desperate. He needs allies. He needs the UK. He needs the USA.
He needs the capitalist West to save him.
Precisely. But here is the PR problem. Stalin knows that the West is naive, but they aren't stupid. It is very hard to sell the Soviet Union as the good guys if the American public realizes that this is just a war between two variants of socialism.
Red socialism versus brown socialism.
It looks like a family feud, not a moral crusade. So Stalin needs to rebrand the enemy. He needs a label that separates Hitler from socialism entirely. And he and his propaganda machine start exclusively labeling the German invaders as fascists.
By lumping them in with Mussolini.
Right. Mussolini actually was a fascist. That was his partner's name. By grouping Hitler with Mussolini and Tojo in Japan, Stalin created a clear binary narrative: the freedom-loving socialist Soviet Union versus the evil right-wing fascists.
That is incredibly shrewd. He just erased the socialist part of National Socialist from the conversation.
And it worked. The source says this description became standard in the Eastern Bloc for over 40 years. You were never fighting National Socialism, you were fighting fascism. And the crucial part is that this propaganda didn't stay in Russia.
It trickled over.
It trickled over to American universities, American media, American political life, and it stuck.
It stuck hard.
And the author argues that modern socialists in the West adopted this terminology desperately. They need to distance themselves from the Nazis, who the author calls their cousins at arms. So they keep using Stalin's label.
If you scream fascist at the opposition, you hide the family resemblance.
Exactly.
This explains so much about our current political vocabulary. If you accept this theory, then every time someone screams fascist at a libertarian or a conservative online, they're unknowingly repeating Soviet war propaganda from 1941.
That is the implication. We're fighting with ghost weapons, using definitions that were manufactured to hide the truth, not reveal it.
I want to pivot to the author for a second, because reading this, you get the sense that this isn't just an academic exercise for them. There's some real anger here.
There is. The text reveals that the author grew up in a socialist-run country in Eastern Europe. They aren't speculating from a comfortable office in a Western university.
They lived it.
They lived it. There's a line in there that's something like, "Nobody who only sees theory will lecture me about Nazis and socialists."
It's a total rejection of the academic approach in favor of lived experience.
The author is basically saying, I know what the roots are because I tasted the fruit. And that leads to their ultimate advice for the listener.
Right. The comeback.
We started this episode talking about that moment when someone calls you a Nazi. The author suggests the ultimate rebuttal is simply this: I am not a Nazi because I am not a socialist.
That is a mic drop.
It completely flips the script. It forces the accuser to defend the definition. The author then follows up by saying you should tell the accuser, you, on the other hand, have a lot in common with the Nazis.
Because, again, if your endgame is state control and the suppression of dissent,
you're climbing the same tree. That's the conclusion the source drives home. Whether it's National Socialism or International Socialism, the tactics over conquered lands were identical.
And the text reminds us of that uncomfortable fact that World War II was started by both the Nazis and the Soviet Union.
They crossed the Polish border together, and the goal for both was to dominate society and rule without question. The label class, or race, that's just the vehicle to get to total control.
It's a heavy perspective. I mean, it really forces you to re-examine almost everything you were taught in history class about the political spectrum.
It requires you to step back and look at the structure of power, not just the slogans. If the outcome is the same, tyranny, camps, poverty, does it really matter what color the flag is?
So let's wrap this up. We've unpacked the one tree theory. We've looked at how the roots Marxism feed both the Soviet and Nazi branches.
We've seen how they differ in method one, destroying institutions, the other hollowing them out, but align in their outcome. And we've explored how a clever propaganda pivot by Stalin in 1941 might be responsible for the confused way we all shout at each other today.
It really makes you question the labels we use every day. We think these words, Nazi, fascist, socialist, are set in stone, scientifically defined.
But maybe they're not.
This deep dive suggests they're actually fluid, historically manipulated, and often used to hide the truth rather than reveal it.
And that leads us to a final sort of uncomfortable question to leave you with today.
What's that?
If the definition of fascism versus Nazism was largely a product of Stalin's wartime PR needs, a fabrication we've all just accepted as historical fact, what else are we wrong about?
Exactly. How many other political truths that we accept without question were actually manufactured in a war room 80 years ago just to hide a family resemblance?
It makes you wonder who is defining the terms you use today and why.
Something to think about next time you see a political argument heating up. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.